Updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Good morning, and welcome to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Guys, you know, whenever you see me sitting here, it's because we're having those conversations that you want to have and asking those questions that you want to know. Now, this morning is no different, and we're kicking off this morning by talking a bit about what's happening in the Down syndrome community. As you know, we have recently celebrated Down Syndrome Awareness Day, and we had a great time coming out on Tuesday with our socks and, you know, doing all of that to raise awareness. But this morning, we're talking about what's really happening to impact change, to bring awareness to the community and give as much assistance to the development of this community as is possible. And to have that conversation with me this morning, I have the privilege of sitting with the founder and the chairman of the Down Syndrome Family Network, Mr. Fitzherbert Glen Niles. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Morning,
And
Cheryl.
sitting with him this morning, as well as the executive director of the National Down Syndrome Congress, Mr. Jordan Coe. And so we just want to thank you guys for coming in this morning and chatting a bit with us. As I said previously in my opening, we have seen a lot of awareness happening throughout this week, but it's about going beyond simply awareness or just wearing a socks or just talking about it, the actions that we portray in order to really help to develop this community. And this year we heard a lot about planning development and moving forward with us and not for us, and talking about the level of independence that members of this Down syndrome community is looking for in relation to being a part of policy decision, just generally being included. And when we talk about inclusivity, whether it be corporate inclusivity or in education, we're talking about opening up sectors to allow for the inclusion of different individuals from different backgrounds. And members of the Down syndrome community is no different. So, Mr. Fitzherbert, this morning you are here from the Down syndrome Family Network, and this is located in Trinidad and Tobago, right?
Yep.
Right,
Trinidad and
and
Tobago.
right, local grown. And Mr. Coe, your organization is straight out of the United States. So tell me a bit about how this relationship started.
Okay. All right. Well, I love your beginning, Chanel. I mean, you hit all the points that the Down Syndrome Family Network that we were founded on, all the basics that we were founded on, which is all about inclusion of persons with Down syndrome and, of course, other disabilities. Because we can't separate disabilities. And my first interaction with someone with Down syndrome really is when my son was born. And you know, at that time, I didn't know anything. I needed to find information. I couldn't get the kind of information that I wanted. Because I didn't, staying in Trinidad and Tobago, I thought his future would have been I had to take care of him for the rest of his life until he died or until I died. But I needed to know more than that. So I started looking externally. And I came across the National Down Syndrome Congress based in Atlanta and the National Down Syndrome Society based in New York. And I became affiliated with these organizations. But the catalyst was when I attended the National Down Syndrome Congress. They have an international conference. I keep telling them they had to change the name because they had an international conference. And they have it every year. And I attended this conference, and it was the first time in my life I saw so many people with Down syndrome in one place. Because I know here we hide them away, they're special, we are ashamed of them, right? They were all out there at the conference, coming into the hotel. I mean, back then it was about 2007, 2008. And the conference had over 3,000 attendees. And a large percentage of this were people with Down syndrome. And then as it was every year, it was like a reunion for them. So imagine me coming from Trinidad and Tobago, where I don't see people with Down syndrome, to seeing a lot of young adults, children, and even elderly people with Down syndrome coming into this hotel lobby, going, checking in. Those who come with their parents after they check in and the parents take the bags to go up to the room, they left with their friends with Down syndrome to go and hang out in the hotel, walking out the hotel, going out in the street. So I'm like looking at them, like staring in shock. want to know who going with them, who holding their hand to cross the street, how they could just walk out by themselves. I couldn't relate to that. So, my jaw was on the ground for most of the time. Even attending the presentations, there was the feature presentation was given by a self-advocate. And I didn't know what that meant. So I'm like, okay, go to see. Saw this guy going up, and he opened up his laptop. I find he kind of short and thick, and I'm watching, he have a short neck, so I'm like, who is this guy? When he turned around, the camera put him up on the big screen. He had Down syndrome. So I'm like, he's going to do a PowerPoint presentation. And he did. He spoke very well. I could understand everything he said, and spoke about his life, his schooling, and what brought him to this point. He was employed. And I was like, but he has Down syndrome. I still couldn't understand that. So how come I am meeting these people with Down syndrome like this, but back home, people with Down syndrome can't do anything? And that's when I realized it's basically because of that inclusivity, that inclusive educational system, one, and that translates to a more inclusive society. So, that cemented my relationship with the National Down Syndrome Congress.
Right.
And when I came back and I got together with 4 other parents and we formed the Down Syndrome Family Network, we actually had the president of the National Down Syndrome Congress come to our launch on the 21st of March in 2012. That was James Faber at the time. He and the Latin American, the director in charge of Latin America and the Caribbean, they both attended our launch in Trinidad when the network was launched. So our relationship started from inception and has grown stronger since then.
And Mr. Cole, tell us a bit about the reach of your of the Congress and the type of work that you guys really do.
Yeah, absolutely. Our convention is our major moment, as Glenn was talking about. We have about 5,000 people now that attend that. We're going to be in Orlando this year from July 20th to July 23rd. We're hoping to have 6,000 or 7,000 people this year. We opened registration on World Down Syndrome Day on Tuesday, and we had 1,600 people register that day. And so our goal is to really do a lot of international outreach and to help groups just like we're seeing here in Trinidad and Tobago really reach out in these inclusive ways, identify ways we can work with teachers, where we can work with the programs to train the self-advocates to go and take meetings themselves, so to go and meet with employers or to go and meet with government officials, talk about why laws are important, talk to their school districts about why inclusion is important. What we know is that getting inclusion and getting access for families is how we change their lives. We show them their ability to be employed, their ability to be part of the community.
Right. And so at the convention, what you guys usually do is training and empowerment?
Yeah, we do a little bit of everything at the conventions. We do a lot in 4 days. We have a specific conference that is just for individuals with Down syndrome that are 15 years or older. And they go through probably about 40 different workshops where they learn from each other. So half of those workshops are run by other self-advocates. They teach them about how they applied for jobs, what they're doing at school. Some of them are in college programs and what those are like. We have a college fair. We have a job fair. We have another 150 workshops for parents. We have a training session for teachers. We teach people how to work on policy and go and advocate for changing legislation in their states and federally. So we have all kinds of things that go on that day. We have dances, we have runs, we focus on health. We have a whole medical interest group that comes. So about 150 of the leading doctors in the United States come into our conference as well. And so it's a tremendous experience for families like Glenn's or others that can come in to be able to just sit down with one of the 2 or 3 best doctors in the world that know about issues related to Down syndrome, and just be able to have lunch with them and to say, hey, this is the experience I'm having. How can I learn more? How can I help? What can I take home to my country and share with others?
Wow, and that is excellent. Question, accessibility to these conferences for the average person, the average family, how accessible is it? Is it that you guys ever offered scholarships or funding that is in place to ensure that there's equity in regards to access to the conference?
Absolutely. Well, we're really looking at trying to create more access, but this year we set aside $25,000 in scholarships for international or non-English speaking attendees. So whether that's someone that doesn't speak English within our country, but then also outside the country as well. So looking at the Caribbean, looking in Central and South America are big areas where we know there are a lot of there's a lot of work to be done on inclusion, and so we want to bring them there. And so we actually set aside more money for international scholarships than domestic scholarships in the United States.
Wow, and that is important, especially for developing countries like Trinidad and Tobago, especially seeing that we have not reached where we want to be in regards to care for Down syndrome society, as well as education level, access to jobs, inclusion, and and the availability of a number of resources. So is it that the Down Syndrome Family Network does their part to raise awareness of the availability of these scholarships to allow for all types of families to have access to having that same experience that you had when you were basically flabbergasted by being exposed to the level of advancement that members of the Down Syndrome Society had?
Okay, so the most work that we do is lobbying for human rights. Because as you mentioned, we are so far behind with getting to even a point where persons with Down syndrome can be included in anything. First, they are segregated from birth. As soon as they are born, you look at them, they are special, they are sent to a special school. After that, they are never integrated into society. So we never see them, we never get to know them, they never interact with society. So we even have people that don't even know the difference between Down syndrome and autism. Because as far as they are concerned, they don't see people with Down syndrome, they don't see people with autism, and they just lump the two together, and they are both distinct intellectual disabilities. So with the Down Syndrome Family Network, besides that, we have our own conference in Trinidad and in Tobago, and we also have quarterly workshops as well, where we bring people from the community together. And this is the other misconception, is that our conferences and the workshops are for people with children with disabilities alone. And that is not so. It's for everyone. It's for the public. It's for the professionals in the healthcare system, of course, education, persons doing social work, and really the general public, because that is how we have to create that awareness. Because people, it's difficult to lobby for a segment of the population that nobody knows. You don't see them. So that, you know what they say, once you don't see something, you don't care about it, right? So the first thing we do with having that strong charity model towards persons with disabilities, the first thing we want to do is give money to them and take care of them. So we don't think about inclusion because we don't think that they can be included. It even starts in the home. They are not included in the home. Parents treat them special. They take care of them. They don't allow them to do things because you don't want them to get hurt. And you actually feel you're helping them. And I was one of those parents. I thought I was helping my son by doing everything for him, but I was actually hindering his progress. When I couldn't get him into a school, and I just put my tail between my leg and walk away, when they said, no, carry him to a special school. And that was the worst thing I could have done for him, instead of fighting against that and getting him into the regular school, which is what should have happened. Because according to the Act, he should be allowed to go in that school in his catchment area. No child left behind. But it doesn't happen because nobody challenges it. So we have started as the network by lobbying for their human rights. We have started challenging it. And now we do have children attending the regular schools. Not in the volume that they should, because we are still working on getting national legislation for persons with disabilities, that will enforce that. But at least some schools have decided to take in children, and we actually have one student who will be sitting a CA this year. So we're hoping that she will be the first person with Down syndrome to attend secondary school. Now, with regard to the conference, as we are an NGO, so we don't have all that funding, so we let people know about the conferences and try to encourage them to attend. But as I said, it's difficult for them to even start attending ours, because people are still stuck in that old paradigm where they're still ashamed of their child. They don't bring them out in the community. So, to bring them out to a conference, even worse. They're not coming. Even when we try to get the parents to attend, okay, your child is in school, try and attend. They don't take the time off. In Trinidad, and we actually have more parents attending in Tobago, which is a good sign. and as well as getting teachers to attend. Because the main thing with the conference is every year we bring down someone with Down syndrome who is very accomplished, just to show parents where your child could be if you empower them and if you don't hinder them, if you don't set your limits on them by thinking what you think they can do and instead presume competence and allow them to try. You know, opportunity, they always say opportunities reveal potential. Like, I can't tell what you'll be able to do. Only when you try, then you could show me, right? So our guest speaker at this year's conference is Monica Myers. She's 14 years old. She's from Toronto, Canada, and she's a runway model. She skis, she does figure skating, and she does everything else that any average 14-year-old does. You know, so and that was my experience with meeting people like that when I attended the National Down Syndrome Congress conference. I went out to dinner with self-advocates, and at the time the Democratic election in the US was coming up, and they were discussing Hillary's principles against Obama's principles. And that was incredible for me. I mean, they knew exactly everything about what they spoke towards disability legislation and policies, and they were debating on it. And I was sitting at that table as the only person without Down syndrome, sitting in that restaurant, and I'm just staring at them, trying not to stare, of course.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you can imagine how I felt.
Yes.
You know, these are people with Down syndrome discussing the Democratic elections in the US. I mean, like, seriously? And back home, what are they? Special? And they can't do anything? It's almost like if, so why is that? And the main reason is that integration. Because if you're not educated, you cannot be integrated. And
so,
once we separate them from the school system, that's it.
Definitely. And so how has that advocacy been going for you guys? Have you been advocating for that here in Tobago as well as in Trinidad for young persons with Down syndrome to get into regular schools? How has it been? Like, how has the increase in uptake been since the advocacy has begun, since you started the network?
Very slowly, but it has been taking root because we've had conversations, you know, with the THA, with all the secretaries of education coming forward. We had a little setback, but everything changed, you know, once a new administration comes in. But we've developed partnerships with the Secretary of Education in the division now, and we've continued that partnership with the Tobago House of Assembly, and they are on board because they understood the need. You know, in the beginning, everybody was at the same mindset. You know, it's kind of difficult to change society when you've been doing something for a number of years. You know what they say about common law, right? You think that that's the right way, that's the only way, until you begin to think, okay, let's try another way. Let's try something differently. So we are in serious conversations with them. As you see, the secretary of the division is supposed to be speaking at the conference, and she spoke last year. So we have a full partnership with them to work towards that inclusive education. Now, a lot of people feel a little threatened by us because they think, okay, well, if children are included, well, what happens to the special schools? What happened to the special ed teachers? Will they be out of a job? No, they won't be, because everybody would not be able to be integrated. You know, there must be some kind of assessment. But we don't want that blanket approach where everybody with a disability has to go here and we box them away. You know, that will never cause us to produce self-advocates like Monica Myers and all the others that we've brought down before.
Right. And so this morning is when the conference is happening at the Shaw Park Cultural Complex. So tell us a little bit about that. It's starting at 9 a.m. this morning. So
Yes.
to tell parents how, so students are also invited. We are inviting members of the Down syndrome society as well as parents, teachers, just members of society.
Yeah, it's primarily for the public, for professionals, caregivers. We have all the different therapists, because we always have professional speakers coming down. So we have, well, we see, on the flyer, there's the chief sec of the THA, Dr. Israel. We have Assemblyman Zarisha Hackett, you know, from Tobago. And we also have other speakers. Well, we have Mr. Koo here and Monica Myers, you know. So it is a professional conference, and it is not only for persons who have children with Down syndrome or some disability. It's for the public. We have to be interested in disability affairs. You know, I talk to people and I say, hey, the government is drafting national legislation on persons with disabilities. I remember when they were doing the national policy on persons with disabilities and they put out for public consultation, it wasn't very heavily attended. You only saw like stakeholders from the disabled community. And I'm like, no, this is wrong. You as the public should be interested in what is happening to other citizens with disabilities because you can become disabled through illness, injury, or once you get old enough. Like even with me, people look at me and they say, oh, he looks strong and robust. I have lower back issues, my knee issues from all very active lifestyle when I was young. Right? So disability issues should impact on all of us and we should be interested. So when we see the government is putting out for public consultation on national legislation for persons with disabilities, please attend. When you see conferences like this pertaining to the rights of persons with disabilities, please attend.
Right. And so as we wrap up our interview this morning, Mr. Cole, tell us why it was important for you to make the journey to Trinidad and Tobago to be a part of this conference, and what are some of the resources or ideologies that you plan to share with members of the public today during that conference?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we wanted to be here to stand in solidarity with our partners, that this is an important program going on here. There's a lot of work to be done in Trinidad. There's a lot of work to be done in the United States still. And so if we want to be a leader in the world of inclusion and showing what we need to do in education and access, we need to make sure that we're present all across the world. And if we're inviting people to our convention, we've got to be here to do it in person. You know, for us, it's really taking all the lessons that we learn at convention, taking all of the lessons that are shared from family to family, from expert to family, et cetera, and turning those into things that can be shared in workshops. We've talked with the Down Syndrome Family Network here about doing a training online, of working with their self-advocates about how they can go to their local political officials and how they can work with them to get laws changed and how to get things passed. And so finding new ways to partner in the ways that can help change the laws here, change inclusion here, change access here. It's important to us in Trinidad, everywhere across the world, and in the United States.
Thank you so much. And so I want to give you the opportunity again, before you leave, to really encourage people to come out this morning to the Shaw Park Cultural Complex at 9 a.m. and participate. So right before we close off our interview, go ahead and tell people why it's really important for them to really be here this morning.
It is, as I said, you always hear the saying, we are our brother's keeper. But are we actually our brother's keeper if we continue segregating them, if we continue hiding them away, if we continue being ashamed of them, and if we keep hindering their progress? So instead of, let us forget everything we've learned before, right? All that academic qualifications and experience before, let us forget that. And let us try and turn a new page and let us try and presume competence. Don't limit anybody with your preconceived limits. Forget about the years in special ed, the years in regular education system where, oh, we can't teach them children. Forget that. Let's try and teach them. Stop looking at the problems. You know, everybody say, if you put them in the school, they'll get bullied, they'll get this, the teacher's not trained. No, let's fix the problems. Let's use all that education and experience to be more solutions-oriented. So instead of focusing on the problems, if we focus on the solutions, we will get way better results.
All right, thank you so much, guys. And you heard it here. So this morning, with the Down Syndrome Family Network would be having that conference at the Shaw Park Cultural Complex, and it's starting at 9 a.m. So make sure to make your way over there if you know anyone that's interested in being there. If you can take the time out to be there, be sure to join in solidarity for inclusivity, where education is concerned, inclusion in corporate affairs, and just overall decision making. Guys, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more conversation. See you right after this break.